as the center of the great work of God that it actually is. God rescuing, restoring, and renewing. It's just amazing. And so then it occurred to me that the story of resurrection can actually be told in the story of 4 gardens. I love this time of year. Spring is coming. As you know, those of you who know me, I really enjoy gardening. I enjoy getting out into the garden. I enjoy growing things. I enjoy the joy of seeing seeds come alive again and things, those bulbs that I put in the ground last autumn poking through, and everything that is to come through the summer season. I love to sow seeds, to nurture plants, to edit landscapes and curate just what appears and what doesn't appear. Pruning, weeding, coaxing fruit and flowers from the earth. So gardens are close to me, and you'll just have to put up with me if you're, it's the furthest thing from your joy that you could possibly imagine. Because I'm going to try and use this figure to help us understand something about resurrection. Because not only are the gardens that I'm going to tell you about the sites of key events in the resurrection journey, I think what goes on in those gardens helps us to understand what resurrection actually means. So let's jump right in on our garden tour. We haven't got long for this, so tag along for the ride. The first garden that we're going to visit is where it all began. The Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden. Our first garden is at the beginning of our Bibles as well, in Genesis 2 and 3. It's the garden of God, made by God, made to be God says, very good, because it was a place of wonder and beauty, even to its maker. As God looked and considered what he'd made, he declared it to be beautiful, wondrous. And it was a place of friendship with God, a place of true worship where there wasn't anything that disconnected, but everything that connected. Men and women were connected to nature and connected also to their maker God. And they could walk with God and talk with God and relate to God day by day. And through his creation, understand the wonder of what he was thinking and in his mind, and the companionship that came from him delighting to share that with his created beings was deep and amazing. But of course, this garden, this wondrous place, was also a place of deeply flawed choices that were actually fatal in consequence. Because it was there that the choice was made to embrace the curse of death. It was in this garden that the choice was made to embrace the curse of separation, and the choice was made to embrace the curse of sin. Nobody knew when they made that choice that those were going to be the consequences. But as Eve and Adam made those choices, those were the choices that they made. They made choices that moved them away from God and took them away from God. This garden is a tough place because this is the garden of death. So let's move on. Fast forward to the next garden in this drama, and we're coming through pages and pages of the scriptures to get to this garden, because the garden that I want you to end up in now is the Garden of Gethsemane. A garden that John chapter 18 tells us about, as we're told there that going out, Jesus left with his disciples, having finished praying, and crossed the Kidron Valley, and on the other side was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Judas went off to do his thing. Jesus goes into the garden, and we find the gravely troubled Jesus here in this garden, almost crushed by the knowledge of what is to come. Because we're rapidly now in this garden, having had centuries go by. Long periods, we don't know how long. Eons go by. And we find the sharp end now of God's rescue mission for a broken world being played out in the person of Jesus, here in the Garden of Gethsemane, and it's going to be played out in lash and in nail and in spear. It's going to be played out on a cross and in a grave as the Son of God is put to death, not only because he threatens Rome and all it stands for, but as the ultimate and only sacrifice for sin. The act that all of the sacrifices done through all of the Old Testament pointed towards. They were all pointing to the cross and to what was going to happen there. The fact that the Son of God would die on our behalf. Now, appropriately enough, in the dark of a garden, the burden of grief and sin weighs heavily on Jesus. God, the three-in-one, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, is about to be torn apart, broken, so that the curse of sin might be too. And here in the cool of the garden is a moment of decision. Having set upon this course of action since the beginning of all time, having been forever in the heart of God and in the mind of God to be done, Jesus still, this moment, is confronted with a moment of decision. Will he do it, or will he call down the legions of angels to defend him? Will he take on the darkness of sin and of death? And then there's a moment also of betrayal as his friends. First one, Judas, betrays him, then the others all run away. And he is abandoned to all that is to come. This is the garden where we realize that what the Apostle Paul writes later on is played out for us. Who being in very nature God, this man, the Lord Jesus, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. That happened, folks, in this garden. He submitted to the will of the Father. So now, after 3 days of shock and loss, we join Jesus' friends in another garden, the garden that Andrew read to us about from the Gospel of John. We're told there in John chapter 19 that after Jesus died, Joseph of Arimathea took Jesus' body and he took it to a garden in the place that Jesus was crucified. And in that garden was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. So this next garden is the garden of death, in a sense, the garden of the garden where we're going to hear about the resurrection, but this is the garden tomb. We started in a garden that brought death. Now we're in a garden of death, but it's not going to stay that way. And that's the wonderful message of Easter, because when Mary Magdalene arrives to pay her respects, she finds the tomb open and empty. She can't believe it. What's going on? She saw what had happened just a few days before. She saw them put Jesus' body here. She saw the soldiers start their guard. And she draws the only conclusion that is available to her. They have taken the Lord. Can you imagine that feeling of loss in the pit of her stomach as she realized not only has Jesus died, but his body has now been desecrated as well? They have taken the Lord. Peter, she runs and tells the disciples, and Peter and John come running and find nothing but empty grave clothes still laid in the place where Jesus was laid. His body had been laid. And they rush off to tell the others what they have found, leaving Mary in the garden in the tears of her grief, in this garden tomb. And finally, she bends to look into the tomb herself, and she's confronted, or is it comforted, by two angels who ask, "Why are you crying?" I love this. Angels seem to always have strange messages, don't they? But they're actually important. Why are you crying? You don't need to cry, the angels want to tell her. You don't need to cry because what you're crying for isn't actually what's taken place. She's so confused, she doesn't really recognize what's going on. What on earth is going on? You can imagine the confusion of her head. And turning to go, she nearly bumps into Jesus, but she doesn't know it's Jesus who asks her the same question, verse 13 of John chapter 20. "Woman, why are you crying?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you've put him." And Jesus said to her, "Mary." And she says to him, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus is the same, but different. Mary takes a moment to recognize him. It's so unexpected. His appearance is not what she thought was going to happen. But Jesus has broken the curse of death. He's broken the curse of sin. He's broken the curse of separation. And in the days that follow, the disciples begin this journey of working out what this means, what the consequences of this are for them and for the world around them, and then consequently for us. Thousands of years later, 2,000 years later, here we are still on Easter Sunday celebrating that moment with Mary, with the disciples. We join them in saying, "He is alive." I told you it was going to be a quick tour, and we've got to our fourth garden already. And you're thinking, where is this garden? Let me just bring you to this garden because it's a different sort of garden. This is a garden city. From Revelation chapter 22, we read in verse 1, "Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing down from the throne of God and of the Lamb, down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of God and of the Lamb will be in the city, and his servants will serve him. They will see his face. His name will be on their foreheads. There will be no more night. They will not need the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for the Lord God will give them light, and they will reign forever and ever." This sounds an amazing city, doesn't it, to be in? The new city of God. The renewed city of God come to earth, watered by the river of life, flowing from the throne of God himself. But here also is the tree of life, bringing healing not just to you and me, but to the nations. Oh boy, and don't the nations need healing this Easter time? That's to come. That's a garden that becomes a possibility because of the others. Because the garden of death became the garden of delight, When Mary saw the risen Lord, she realized that death had been defeated. Death could not hold him down. And that garden of delight opens to us this garden of dreams, this garden of possibilities. Big enough for all of us. So consider just for a few moments what this garden theme throughout the scriptures, what these 4 gardens perhaps help us to understand. First of all, it helps us to understand something about paradise. That's a word that English has borrowed from Persian, I'm told, and from Old Persian, and I think that word really meant an enclosed space, a garden, a sheltered place, a place that was ordered and purposeful. A place that kept out the wildness of the surrounds and had a sense of order in it. That's perhaps what gardeners like me are trying to recreate, that moment, that sense of somewhere that's done just as you would like it to be done. A garden also, the theme of the garden points to the gardener. There has to be someone responsible with the intention and purpose of keeping this space, with the design of what it is supposed to be, and who's prepared to put the work into it. And so when we look at the gardens of the scriptures and see the journey of the resurrection story, we see that there has been a great gardener at work throughout. God has been working out his purposes, seeking always to deliver his intentions. What he started with creation is where he wants to end in all perfection. And what has gone on in between, he will put right, even though it cost the death of his son, that most precious of all things. A garden speaks of the environment that makes it up, of soil and water and light. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. He says, if anyone thirsts, I will give them water such that it will flow out of them. They will never thirst again. He speaks of soil where the purposes of God take root, and soil where it doesn't. Gardens are that combination of environment that enables things to happen, and God is working to build an environment that enables his blessing to grow. It also speaks of seasons. Everything has its time. There are times when the trees are bare like they are just now, but even now we see those tender shoots of leaves breaking forth, budding, the trees outside beginning to flower as we experience the blossom of the spring. The seasons are changing. Time is moving on, and so is God's time. Everything has its time. And in the fullness of time, friends, won't it be good to make our way to the heavenly city, to see that city brought to life on earth by God and his power and grace? Because gardens point to fruitfulness as well. The potential that they bring, the beauty that they bring, the delight that they bring. That's the whole point. To make stuff grow, to enable it to be there. And there's one last thing that I want to help you see and understand as we try and get into our heads what this resurrection business is all about. How Jesus opens up to us new possibilities that are impossibilities without him. And that is through the metaphor and image of seeds. Seeds. I love how the Apostle Paul uses this metaphor in 1 Corinthians 15 to explain resurrection. Someone will ask, he says, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body will they come? How foolish! What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And when you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed, perhaps of wheat or of something else. Verse 42 of 1 Corinthians 15 goes on. So it will be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown is perishable, but it's raised imperishable. It's sown in dishonor. It's raised in glory. It's sown in weakness. It's raised in power. No wonder he says in verse 54, when the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable and the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? I love this image. I think it's so helpful to us. What kind of body will we have in resurrection? Well, it's like the same kind of body as when I take a little seed and I put it into a tray of soil and I germinate that seed. That seed looks absolutely nothing like say I take a little seed from a zinnia or a seed from a dahlia or a seed from a cosmos. They're tiny and they don't look anything like what they're going to become. The wonderful plant, the fruitfulness that they're going to have, what they're going to share with the world around about them. And the same is true of you and me. God intends, if we are not part of his coming again and we have to go through death, he intends to plant us so that we might grow to life again in him forever. And be raised. And then we'll still be, those seeds will only grow that particular thing that they are. I'll only grow an Andy. You'll only grow a you. But God will grow that most beautiful and wondrous you that is possible from the seed that is planted. Here is what it means then to follow Jesus in his life, through his death, and into his resurrection. It is hope everlasting. One day, we will rise just as he has risen. One day, we will be the same but different if we trust in him, because the great gardener will be at work, bringing us to new life, bringing us to be part of his forever garden, his creation made just the way it's supposed to be. Resurrection is about life from death. Resurrection is an invitation to believe. Resurrection is an invitation to follow Jesus. Resurrection is a hope to hold on to. Resurrection is a power to live by, because resurrection doesn't just start one day in the future. Resurrection is for now. We, my friends, are resurrection people if we know and love Jesus, because already we live in him. And the fullness of what we are to be is going to be revealed. So my invitation this morning is, if you believe that, hold on to it. And if you're not sure, take hold of it. Because here is a hope that can be kindled in your heart that will never let you down, that will never leave you alone. There's a place in the garden for you. We're going to come now and sing our closing song, and then we'll come to the close of our service together as I pray. Let's stand and sing together, remembering all that Christ has done for us and enables for us in his resurrection.